It was supposed to be a simple afternoon. The sun was warm, the sky was clear, and the quiet suburban street was lined with neat houses and manicured lawns. 14-year-old Maya Carter was just walking home from school, her backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, nodding along to her favorite song. She had taken this route 100 times before, past the coffee shop, the library, and the little park where kids played on the swings. But today, something was different. The man across the street had been watching her. She noticed him out of the corner of her eye, standing on his porch, arms crossed, his expression tense. At first, she ignored it. It was not the first time an older white man had looked at her like she did not belong. She had learned to brush it off, just like her mom had taught her. But when she heard his voice call out, loud and sharp, she knew this was not something she could ignore. "Hey, what are you doing around here?" His tone was not friendly. Maya pulled out one of her earbuds and turned slightly, confused. "Excuse me? You live here?" he asked, stepping closer. "Yes," she answered hesitantly. She did not owe him an explanation, but she also did not want trouble. "I live just down the street." But the man did not seem convinced. He pulled out his phone and held it up like a weapon. "You do not look familiar. This neighborhood has had some break-ins lately. I think I better call the police." Maya's heart started pounding. She had heard stories like this before. Black kids being questioned for simply existing in places they had every right to be. Her mother, Vanessa Carter, had warned her about situations like this. "Stay calm," her mother had always told her. "Do not argue. Do not give them a reason to think you are a threat." So Maya took a deep breath and forced her voice to stay steady. "Sir, I am just walking home from school. I have lived in this neighborhood for years." But he was already dialing.
Yes.
"I need an officer here right away," he said into the phone, his eyes locked on her. "There is a suspicious individual walking around. Young, black, female. She looks like she is up to something." Maya felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to run, but she knew that would only make things worse. She stood frozen, gripping the straps of her backpack tightly. People were passing by, some glancing in her direction, but no one stopped to help. Then, she remembered what her mother always told her. "If you are ever in trouble, call me first." With shaky fingers, she pulled out her phone and hit the speed dial. The moment her mother answered, Maya's voice wavered. "Mom, this man is calling the police on me." There was a pause on the other end, but only for a second. Then came her mother's voice, calm, firm, unshaken. "Stay where you are, Maya. I am on my way." What the man did not know, what he could not possibly imagine, was that Maya's mother was no ordinary woman. Vanessa Carter was one of the most respected federal prosecutors in the state. She had spent years fighting for justice in courtrooms, standing up against discrimination, exposing corruption, and holding the powerful accountable. And now, she was about to hold him accountable, too. As Maya stood there, her pulse racing, the sound of sirens in the distance, she felt the weight of the moment. She had no idea how this was going to play out. Would the police believe her? Would they see her as just another black teen causing trouble? Or would they realize their mistake the second her mother arrived? Maya's hands were trembling as she gripped her phone, her mother's voice still echoing in her ears. "Stay where you are. I am on my way." But every second that passed felt like an eternity. The man on the porch kept glancing at her, his expression hard, his grip on the phone firm. As he continued talking to the dispatcher, "Yes, she's still here," he said, pacing slightly. "Dark hoodie, jeans. Just standing there like she's waiting for something. We've had some issues in the neighborhood. You never know these days." Maya swallowed the anger rising in her throat. Issues in the neighborhood? She had lived here since she was a kid. She had played hopscotch on the sidewalks, ridden her bike up and down these streets, waved at neighbors as she walked by. But none of that seemed to matter. Not to this man. To him, she was a stranger. A threat? She wanted to speak up, to say something that would make him see her as a person instead of a problem. But her mother's voice played in her mind again. "Do not argue. Do not react. Just stay calm." Her fingers clenched around the strap of her backpack as she took slow, steady breaths. Around her, People were still moving, cars driving past, a woman pushing a stroller on the other side of the street, an older couple walking their dog. But no one stopped. No one questioned why a grown man was calling the police on a teenage girl who was doing absolutely nothing wrong. The sirens were getting closer now. She could hear them in the distance, their sharp wails cutting through the afternoon air. Her heart pounded faster. Would they even listen to her when they arrived? Or would they believe him first? She thought. About the stories her mother had told her, cases she had worked on, people she had defended, moments when things had gone terribly wrong because someone jumped to conclusions. Her mother had spent years fighting for justice, standing in courtrooms, challenging unfair systems. But now, justice felt very far away. Then, the man spoke again, this time directly at her. "You might want to sit down or something," he said, his voice laced with something that sounded almost like satisfaction. "They'll be here soon. You don't want to do anything that makes you look guilty." Guilty? Maya felt heat rise to her face, but she bit her tongue. She would not give him the reaction he wanted. Instead, she just crossed her arms and stared at him, unblinking. The seconds dragged on. The sirens grew louder. Then, finally, a black car sped around the corner, moving fast, pulling up right in front of her before the police even arrived. The driver's door flew open, and out stepped Vanessa Carter. Maya had never been so relieved to see her mother. Vanessa was dressed in a crisp navy blazer over a pale blue blouse, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement as she walked toward her daughter with purpose. She was not panicked. She was not flustered. She was controlled, collected, and completely in charge. Maya could see the look on her mother's face, calm but fierce, the same expression she had seen her wear when she was deep in casework, preparing to tear apart a weak argument in court. Her mother's presence alone was enough to shift the energy. Even the man on the porch hesitated, his phone still in his hand, his mouth slightly open as if he was processing what was happening. Vanessa reached Maya's side and placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder before turning her sharp gaze to the man. "Is there a reason you're harassing my daughter?" she asked, her voice cool but firm. The man blinked, caught off guard. I wasn't harassing her," he said quickly. "I was just being cautious. I didn't recognize her, and we've had— My daughter lives in this neighborhood," Vanessa interrupted smoothly. "She has walked this street every day for years. There was nothing suspicious about her being here. But there is something very suspicious about you assuming she does not belong." The man's face turned red. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the flashing lights of a police cruiser appeared down the street. Maya felt her stomach tighten. Even with her mother there, even with her mother being who she was, she knew this could still go wrong. The car came to a stop, and two officers stepped out. One, a tall man with graying hair, adjusted his belt as he approached. The other, a younger officer with sharp eyes, walked a step behind him. "Sir, did you make the call?" the older officer asked, glancing at the man on the porch. "Yeah," the man said, nodding quickly. "I saw her walking alone, didn't recognize her, and well, I just thought it was better to be safe than sorry, you know?" The officer turned to Maya. She felt his eyes sweep over her. Her clothes, her backpack, her stance. "Miss, what's your name?" Maya swallowed hard. "Maya Carter," she said, her voice steady. "And where do you live?" "2 blocks down," she answered, pointing toward her street. The officer nodded slightly, but before he could say anything else, Vanessa stepped forward. "My name is Vanessa Carter," she said, pulling out her ID with practiced ease. "I am a federal prosecutor. And this," she gestured to Maya, "is my daughter. She was walking home from school. That is all." The officers exchanged a quick glance. Maya could see the flicker of recognition in their eyes as they processed her mother's title. The shift was subtle, but it was there. The older officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we were just responding to a call based on nothing but an assumption," Vanessa said smoothly. "Do you plan to detain my daughter, or is she free to go?" Maya held her breath. The officer hesitated. "No, ma'am. She's free to go." Vanessa gave a tight nod. "Good." Then I suggest you take a closer look at the real issue here. The younger officer shifted awkwardly, looking toward the man on the porch. Sir, next time, I'd advise you to be sure before calling us. This doesn't appear to be anything criminal. The man stammered, clearly uncomfortable. I was just trying to be careful, he muttered. You can't be too sure these days. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. No, you cannot. Maya exhaled slowly, but she could still feel the tension in the air. This was not over. Her mother was not finished. The officers gave a polite nod before stepping back toward their car, their job technically done. But as they walked away, Vanessa turned back to the man on the porch, her expression unreadable. You assumed my daughter was a threat because of how she looks, she said evenly. You called the police without cause. You could have put her in real danger. The man looked away, shifting uncomfortably. I didn't mean, but you did, Vanessa cut in, her voice like steel. And you will think twice before you do it again. Maya felt her mother's hand squeeze her shoulder gently. It was time to go. But as they turned toward the car, Maya knew this was not something she would forget, because today had been a lesson, not just in fear, but in power. The power of assumptions, the power of words, and most importantly, the power of knowing who you are. As Vanessa and Maya walked back to the car, Maya could still feel the man's eyes on them. His face had gone pale, his lips pressed into a thin line as if he were trying to process everything that had just happened. But Maya knew it was not about understanding. People like him did not think they needed to understand. They just acted, and the consequences never touched them. Vanessa unlocked the car, and Maya slid into the passenger seat, her hands still curled into fists. Her mother got in beside her, adjusting the rearview mirror with the same precision she did everything else in life. She did not speak right away, and neither did Maya. The car was quiet except for the sound of Maya's deep breathing, trying to push down the frustration and confusion swirling inside her. She had always known things like this happened, but experiencing it firsthand was something else. Vanessa finally exhaled. Are you okay? Maya nodded, but it was automatic. She was not sure what she felt. Anger, embarrassment, fear? Maybe all of them at once. I was doing nothing wrong, she said, her voice tight. And he looked at me like I was. She stopped herself, shaking her head. Vanessa turned to face her. Like you were a threat, she finished. For her. Maya nodded, her chest feeling heavier than before. Vanessa sighed, gripping the steering wheel. I know this is not the first time you have seen something like this, Maya, but it is different when it is you. Maya stared out the window. Yeah, it is. For a moment, there was silence again. Then Vanessa spoke, her voice calm but firm. You handled yourself well. Maya let out a small, humorless laugh. I did nothing. You did everything right, Vanessa corrected. You stayed calm. You did not let him provoke you. You waited. That is harder than you think. Maya looked down at her hands. She wanted to believe her mother, but it still felt wrong. It felt unfair. Vanessa reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. You are right, she said softly, reading her daughter's expression. It is unfair. But that is why we do not let it go unanswered. Maya turned to her, confused. What do you mean? Vanessa's lips pressed together in thought. We are not letting this go. Maya's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean, Mom? The police let me go. You shut him down. It is over. Vanessa's expression did not change. No, Maya, it is not. Something in her mother's voice sent a chill down Maya's spine. Because she knew that tone. It was the same tone Vanessa used when she was working on a case she refused to lose. Vanessa put the car in drive, and as they pulled away, Maya glanced back. The man was still standing on his porch, staring after them, his face unreadable. But if he thought this was over, he was very, very wrong. That night, Maya sat on her bed, replaying everything in her head. She could not focus on homework. She had barely touched her dinner. It was like her brain would not let her move past what happened. Her phone buzzed beside her. She picked it up, expecting a message from one of her friends, but her stomach flipped. When she saw the group chat she shared with her mother and Aunt Kim. Vanessa, Maya, I need you to be ready early tomorrow. We are making a stop before school. Maya frowned, typing back, Maya, where? Vanessa, the HOA office. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Maya, Mom, why? Vanessa, because this is not just about today. I have a feeling this is not the first time he has done something like this. And I want to know how deep it goes. Maya's hands tightened. Around her phone. She did not sleep much that night. The next morning, as they pulled up to the HOA office, Maya felt the nervous energy buzzing in her chest. The homeowners association building was small, nestled between a bank and a coffee shop, looking far less intimidating than it probably was. Vanessa parked the car, straightened her blazer, and turned to Maya. You do not have to come in if you do not want to. Maya inhaled deeply. I want to. They walked inside together, the cool air conditioning making Maya shiver slightly. A woman at the front desk glanced up, her polite smile widening when she saw Vanessa. Oh, Miss Carter, what a surprise. Vanessa gave her a smooth, professional nod. Good morning, Sarah. I was hoping to speak with whoever handles resident complaints. Sarah hesitated. Well, Mr. Langley oversees most neighborhood concerns. Do you need to file something? Vanessa smiled, but there was steel behind it. Not yet. Minutes later, they were sitting across from Mr. Langley, a thin man in his late 50s with round glasses and an expression that said he had seen everything before and had no patience for more. What can I do for you, Miss Carter? He asked, folding his hands on the desk. Vanessa's expression remained unreadable. I want to know if there have been other complaints from Mr. Sutton, the man who called the police on my daughter yesterday. Langley blinked, caught off guard. He adjusted his glasses, clearing his throat. I am not sure what you mean. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. I think you do. Mr. Sutton saw my daughter, a black teenager, walking home in her own neighborhood, and assumed she was a threat. I find it hard to believe this was the first time he has done something like this. Langley shifted uncomfortably. Well, Vanessa tilted her head. Because if there is a pattern, I would hate for this to become a legal matter. Langley exhaled, looking away for a moment. Then, finally, he pulled open a drawer, shuffled through some papers, and pulled out a file. There have been a few reports. Maya's stomach twisted. Vanessa took the file and skimmed through it. Maya could see the tension in her mother's jaw as she flipped the pages. Langley cleared his throat. I assure you, we have spoken to him in the past about making unnecessary calls, but nothing has changed, Vanessa finished. Langley looked away. It is complicated. Vanessa closed the file and stood. It is only complicated if you allow it to be. Maya stood too, her heart pounding. As they left the office, she turned to her mother. So what now? Vanessa glanced at her, eyes sharp. Now? We make sure the people in this neighborhood understand what is happening, and we do not stay silent about it. Maya swallowed, the weight of her mother's words settling over her. This was far from over.